Welcome to our very first video on advanced traffic engineering. In this video, we will look at how to use COM interface with PTV VISSIM. My name is Amit Kumar Singh. I will be the presenter for this video. The contributor of this work and the video series in general are Jiangling Wu, Nidhi Kumari, Namrata Kumari, and Prinsu Singh. Before jumping into the actual content, some history of the COM interfaces. COM interfaces or script-based interfaces are heavily used in traffic engineering in day-to-day engineering job. A lot of software provides a direct COM interface or some way of scripting, so we can reduce the manual user input. PTV is one such software. Today we will look at how to use the COM interface from the VBA, EXCEL VBA, even though COM interface within PTV can be accessed through many languages such as MATLAB, Python, C++. VBA is one which is frequently used in practice as most of our data is in Excel, and VBA is a very common programming language used in practice. So we will look at the PTV VISSIM from the VBA perspective. I wanted to mention before we move forward that a lot of these codes were written during my undergraduate around 2011 2012, so a lot of these advanced concepts are not new. They have been there for quite a long time, almost 15-20 years. I used to write VBA codes in VISSIM 5.2, and then during college times, then 5.4, using those codes in VISSIM 5.4, then 6, 7. There were some changes in code around 8, then VISSIM 9, 10, 11. A lot of versions have come and gone, but COM interfaces has kind of been there, and it's kind of an important aspect of working with PTV VISSIM. PTV VISSIM is one of the most widely used software in US, especially in Texas, and I believe it's one of the most widely used software for traffic simulation worldwide. So we'll look at how we can reduce our manual work by using the COM interface, and in the subsequent videos, we will cover some of the advanced topics. So in this video, we will just cover the basics of the COM interface with PTV VISSIM, and then in subsequent videos, we will cover how to use those, in day-to-day engineering job. So first, we will look at the VISSIM software. On the screen is how the VISSIM software looks like. There are a lot of options here and a lot of options from this top drop-down menus. We will not go into VISSIM software in itself. If we want to learn more about the VISSIM software, we will eventually be covering some of the basics in future videos, but there are some great resources online on PTV VISSIM website, and there are a lot of free tutorials and webinars available on their YouTube channel. I would highly recommend referring to their YouTube channel and learning resources that are provided by PTV. Beyond that, if you go to help, there are some very good resources to get some introductory concepts in VISSIM. So there are a lot of resources that are available now. Today we will focus on uh, what is frequently used. So even though there are a lot of resources, there are some things that are more used than others. So we will focus on something that's used pretty heavily in day-to-day job. So let's draw a simple VISSIM network. Uh, so first I will select the link here, and I will uh, disable the uh, disable the background map. I'll just draw a simple link here, and I will give 2 lanes. Click OK. So this is just a simple link with 2 lanes. Then what we will do is we will input the number of vehicles here. By default there is one time period. We are going to increase the number of time period. So here we will uh, edit time intervals. Here we will add, typically we have, for existing conditions we have 4 time periods, and for future we may have more. Future conditions are more complex and are more congested, so in existing we may have, let's say, 4 to 12 time periods, but in future we may have many more. So in future we have at least the number of time periods which are there in existing, but we can have more. For this particular example, we will use 2 time periods for the vehicle input. For the vehicle routes, we'll click here and we will add one route. So this is a very simple network with a vehicle input with 2 time periods and vehicle routing with 1 time period now. And we will add one more time period to vehicle input. So in vehicle input, we have 1 time period where the flow is defined here. We will write control click and we will add one more time period in the static routes. Note that the number of time period in the vehicle input and static routes are generally equal in practice, but they need not to be. If we are using a proportion method, many times we can have less number of static route time periods and vice versa. So we don't need to have the same number of time intervals. So this is a link. We have a vehicle input number 1 and a routing decision number 1. Now we will see how we can change the attribute of the vehicle input and the routing using the COM interface. So to use the VBA COM interface, we will open a blank Excel. So we will start with a blank Excel file. So we have an blank Excel on the screen. We will go to Developer tab, go to Visual Basic to access the COM interface. So I'll make the Visual Basic interface full screen. Here we'll start writing our code. So I'll give sub, let's call it basic VISSIM, or just basic VISSIM is good. Now within VBA, we need to declare the VISSIM as an object to access the VISSIM. Please note that when we install the VISSIM, the COM interface is automatically installed, so we can access it directly. So I'll declare dimension, let's call it a VISSIM 2022 as object. So I have declared an object called VISSIM 2022. Then what we will do is we will set VISSIM 2022 is equal to create object VISSIM dot VISSIM. So um, this is a standard line. This is how we access the VISSIM interface. Many times we have many versions of VISSIM installed in practice. Different projects uses different VISSIM versions, and for review also many times we get previous version work, so it's a good practice to type the version name. So for this one, let's say we are using 2022, we will type 2022. In past, when we used to have VISSIM 5.1, 5.2, we used to write 520 or 540. Here 540 would mean 5.2. Oh, sorry, 5.4. 520 would mean 5.2. So VISSIM version 5.2. So if we have multiple version of VISSIM involved, we can type the version number here, which is always a good practice to use a COM with a version number because different VISSIM has different features and they may not open the file properly. So the VISSIM VISSIM interface we were looking earlier, and the small network we created, I have saved it as basics of VISSIM. So I have saved save this in the same folder as where I am going to save the Excel file. The next step after creating the VISSIM object would be to load the network. So to open a saved VISSIM network, we can use VISSIM 2022, which is the object we have created. We can give any name. It doesn't have to be VISSIM 2022. I can even write my own name. I can write even my own name and it would work fine. So just for simplicity, we are using VISSIM 2022. We can write anything instead. So VISSIM 2022 dot load net. Load net is the command which loads the network. Uh, Here we need to give the full path name of the VISSIM file. Either we can receive it through user input or we can write the full path name. In this case, I'm saving the Excel in the same folder as the VISSIM file, so I can use active workbook dot path, active workbook dot path, and then the file name. So we'll have a backward slash. I have saved it as basics of vissim.inpx. If we have different VISSIM files, usually in practice we replace this name with a user form. We will talk about the user form in the next videos. So once we create the user form, we can read this directly from the user form. After creating the VISSIM object or the VISSIM interface, then loading the network, the next we want to do is save the VISSIM file. So VISSIM 2022 dot save net. Usually I prefer S capital, and then we want to close the VISSIM, so we can say set VISSIM 2022 dot nothing. More or less something like this would create a VISSIM object, load the VISSIM network we have created. It would save the VISSIM file and then close the VISSIM file. In between these two commands is where we write majority of the comments, which we will discuss. So that's pretty much the introduction to VISSIM COM. We are creating a VISSIM object, we are loading the network, then we are saving the network, and then we are closing the VISSIM file. So let's go ahead and run this file. So we'll hit F8. So it's running this command currently. Set VISSIM 2022 is equal to create object is creating a VISSIM object. Sometimes it takes time depending on the license and many other things. Usually it starts slow from the experience. So it has created a VISSIM object. If we can visualize it, what I will do is I'll split the screen so we can see VISSIM on the right hand side. So on the right hand side is a blank VISSIM which opens by default. Note that I have set the default to US settings, so it's opening with miles. If you have new VISSIM installed, it might open with kilometers. Generally it's recommended to change this to US settings. So here we have vissim.loadNet, and then what we will do is we will load the network. We will not make any changes to it for now, and then we will save it and we will close it. So let's hit F8 one more time. So you notice on the right hand side my network is loaded here. Now what we will do is we will save the VISSIM file. So hit F8. It saved the VISSIM, as you can see the flashing in background, and then when I say set VISSIM 2022 is equal to nothing, it closed the VISSIM. So that's the very basic command to access the VISSIM COM interface. Next, what we will do is we will uh, make some changes to the VISSIM file itself. So there are many things we can do with VISSIM. We can change many things, we can play around, and it's mostly heavily used in research. However, in practice, we are mostly focused on the volumes. VISSIM COM interfaces are either used for volumes few times, or very occasionally if it goes beyond the volumes, it goes to signal controllers. But beyond that, most of the VISSIM COM interface uses is localized near inputting and manipulating the volumes and doing many more things than just using the COM interface. So coming up with new ideas all related to traffic volumes or traffic pattern. So what we will do is we will first access the VISSIM input. So set, we'll call it inputs is equal to VISSIM dot net is sorry, VISSIM 2022. VISSIM 2022 dot net. Dot net is how we access the network, and then within the network we will access the vehicle inputs dot vehicle inputs. So that should give us the vehicle inputs. Then we can access the vehicle inputs. So let's say dimensions vehicle input as object. Uh, what we can do is we can iterate through all the vehicle inputs that are available. So for each vehicle vehicle in is one individual input in inputs. So here inputs is the set of all the vehicle inputs. So input is the set of all the vehicle inputs within um, within the set of all the inputs is going to read the inputs one by one. So for each vehicle input in inputs, and then we will close the loop. We will call it next vehicle in. So first it will go to vehicle input 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and then that's how this loop works. After this, what we want to do is we're gonna assign a new volume to the vehicle input. So let's say vehicle input. Vehicle input has many attributes. One of the attribute is the name. Many times we give a particular name to the inputs, and that's how we know which vehicle input we are talking about. But for this one, we're gonna assign all of them a certain number. So vehicle input dot another vehicle input attribute. So I'll write some of the attribute which we frequently use. So the first one we use is the name, another one we use is the number, another one we frequently use is the volume. So these are three attributes that are frequently used in practice. So vehicle input and dot attribute value. This is how VISSIM receives the attributes. I'll call it volume. Uh, if you remember, we have defined two time intervals. So to access the first time interval, we need to say volume 1. So vehicle input dot attribute value 1 is equal to 100. That's all we are going to do. We are going to open the vehicle input attribute. We will look at first we actually have only one, so we'll look at the vehicle input attribute, and out of two time interval we will assign the first time interval to 100. Similarly, we can write the similar code for routing. So first we need to define the route. So let's call it route objects. So for route, first we need to access the route as object. First we need to access the decision points. So we will say set decisions. Notice that I'm not declaring this input as object, but I'm declaring vehicle in as object. Many times the VBA is better to declare the objects, so I could have put here dimension inputs as object and then uh, decisions as object. So many times it's a good practice to declare the objects. However, even if we don't, VISSIM, VBA for most part assigns the object by itself. So we don't necessarily need to declare it, but it's a good practice to declare the objects. So set decisions is equal to VISSIM 2022.net dot vehicle routing decision static. So in practice we mostly work with static routes. For few projects we work with parking routes. There are very rare cases where we work with parcel routes. So for most part, if we are using COM, we are mostly working with static routes. So vehicle routing decision static should give us all the decisions. Next, within one each vehicle route, each vehicle decisions, there are many routes, and within each route there can be many relative flows. So the way routing works is, first we have decisions. Each decisions will have many routes, and each route may have many relative flow time period. The flow for different time period. So from decisions we will declare two more objects. Um, let's call it routes as object. This object we are going to get the routes from the decisions, and then let's call the other one within each route. Uh, we can get it through let's declare it like this. So maybe as object. So moving back and make it full screen. So first we have decisions, which are collection of static decisions. Then within each decision there is a collection of routes, and within each route we will access each route through this object route. So first we need to declare this this uh, this route a collection of routes. So first we will access each of the decisions. So for each decision in decisions, next decision, then within each decision there are multiple routes. So let's call it set routes is equal to decision. So I'm not calling there is no s here, or I wish I can make this a little bit better. So I'll put a capital D here for the collection of decisions, so I can use the small d for decisions. So set routes is equal to decision dot vehicle route static. Now routes has a collection of routes. So for now, for the case we have only one route. So let's say we have 5 different routes. So to access all those routes, we can say for each route in routes. What I'm trying to do here is I'm using the capital initial for a collection and a small letter for the actual object. So his capital D is the set of decisions. Then within these ones there is this one decision point. Then within each decision a set of routes is in capital routes, and within a set of routes there is one route. Now within one route itself there are multiple time periods. To access those time period, we need to access the route attribute. So route dot attribute value, similar to volume, we'll call it relative flow, and for font let's change the second time period for the routes, and let's call it 50. So this pretty much is the basics of a COM interface. This COM interface can create a VISSIM object, load the network, change the vehicle inputs, and change the routes. In practice, this is all we need. A combination of this can be very, very powerful, and a combination of this can be embedded in different logic, and we will see some of those frequently used logics. But pretty much at the heart of everything, this is all the COM interface code we typically use in practice. So what we will do is we'll run this, and we will discuss some in the further videos. I will discuss some advanced concepts that are built upon these basic commands, on how these basic commands can be used to come up with very complex scenarios for the practice. So we're gonna run this one. I'll split the screen in half again. So we'll start with F8. There may be some spelling mistake, but that's pretty much should be it. Route as object, I'm declaring it twice, so I'll delete one. So set VISSIM 2022 is equal to create object. This command is going to start the VISSIM as we discussed. So VISSIM is starting on another screen. I have brought the VISSIM on the other half of the screen. This is the VISSIM network. It opened with the default file that is in the installation folder. Um, the default file is kind of plays an important role in practice. I will discuss that in some other video. So what we will do is we will run the next code and load the object. So here we have loaded the project we are working on. We can see the link we have created. If we click on this button, we can see the link we have created, and here we have some attributes. So for vehicle input, the right now we have 0 and 0. For static routes, let's see, we have 1 and 1, which is the default. So right now we have the default VISSIM inputs. What we want to do is we want to change the volume 1 to 100, which is this one. So first time period, we want to change the volume from 0 to 900, which is the first time period, to 100. And we want to change the static routes. If I select this one, instead of 1 and 1, we are going to change the second one to 50. Another thing is this when we add time periods, this continuous is automatically checked. but in practice we usually don't have this check, so we uncheck those manually for most projects. So we're gonna run the code back again. So right now we have the all the inputs here. I should have probably used a capital I for the reference. Well, too late. So we'll just use it as it is. So we'll set the decisions for each vehicle in inputs. I notice that one of the attributes out of these two, this is time period 1, time period 2, and the same numbers are repeated here. This attribute will change to 100 as soon as I execute this command within my Excel VBA. So next, notice that this has now changed to 100 and this has now changed to 100. Since we have only one vehicle input which we wanted to change, we'll close. So now we are looking at decisions. So for each decisions, let's go to static routes. So we have only one decision in the network. So for each route, within one decision there is only one route, so we'll just change only one route. Actually what I can do is I can add one more route just to see how it loops. So right now I'll create this static. Also it will show how dynamic it is. So right now I have two routes, and we'll notice while we are running the code, if we make the changes while the code is running, if we make the changes, it should be able to read the change network. So for routes is equal to decision dot vehicle routes. Now we have two, so hopefully it's gonna iterate through 2 times. For each route we're gonna change the attribute value of the second flow, which is this one. So I'll click here. We are gonna change the attribute value of this column. Deselect. Okay, so change the attribute value. Next command, you notice this got changed to 50 on the relative flow. So earlier it was 1, now it changed to 50, and we will run one more time. Since we have just added while the VISSIM was open, the code is so dynamic that if we make the changes in code, or if we do, let's say we are writing some complex code which is changing the values while while reading the input from VISSIM. So we can open the VISSIM, do something, read something, and then write the code such that based on the changes within VISSIM, it changes the it changes what need to be fed in VISSIM. So the VISSIM interface is very dynamic. That's one thing I would like to mention. For example, we added this one after executing the code. So while the code was running, we added this one, and it is reading through the second line. So this part was added after running the code, and it's gonna change this part as well. So you'll notice the second one also changed to 50, and we're gonna so that's all decision points we have. VISSIM.SaveNet is gonna save our VISSIM file. We'll notice how the screen changes. So if you can see, there was a blimp and the VISSIM file is now saved, and we will say set VISSIM is equal to nothing. That's gonna close the VISSIM, and VISSIM is closed. That's pretty much how the VISSIM COM interface works. So this is the introduction to COM interface. Now we will see how we can use this simple tools to come up with very uh, nice ideas for automating our manual tasks, and how we use this a simple piece of code to do a lot of work which if done manually can take several weeks, but working through code can take only a few hours. So thank you so much for joining for this video. In the next video we will explain how to use this code for practical purposes.